on here, and also if they could borrow $3, 4, 5 trillion for a stimulus package, they can go borrow another 3, 4, 5 trillion to make that first payment on our reparations. And come on now, all right. But one thing actually about reparations that I want you to keep in mind though is some people talk about things like student loans as part of the reparation package, like cutting out student loans, and that's kind of a false narrative in my view. Student loans are clearly they have crippled black wealth without a doubt. Student loans are one of the reasons why black wealth is going down because your most educated black people are the ones who are going to die in debt. And I'm not making fun of you if you're in this category. There's millions of people in this category. Half of all black college graduates default on their student loans, and also half of all black people who start college never graduate. You guys know I've been a college professor for almost 3 decades, so these are some things that I've known through the years, and my wife's a college professor too. So one of the things about student loans, though, is that student loans are kind of it's a little bit of a sucker's debt in the sense that they loaned you the money, but they really overcharge you for the product in the first place. So in a way, it's kind of like if let's say that I know that you need a candy bar, right? And you're really because you're really hungry, and I say, hey, I can get you a candy bar. Would you like one? You say sure, and you say how much does it cost? And I say, oh, it costs $800, right? And you're like $800 for a Snickers bar? And I'll be like, yeah, it's $800. You don't have to buy it if you don't want to. But let's say you're starving, there's no other food anywhere, and you're like, damn, well, I mean, $800, that's a lot of money. I can't afford $800 for a Snickers bar. So let's say that I say something like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll loan you the money. I'll issue you credit, right? So just sign this piece of paper, and you can eat your Snickers bar now, and you can worry about paying the $800 later, right? So now you got a Snickers bar from me. I have this accounts receivable now, right? I literally have an asset now of $800 in money owed to me, and you got a Snickers bar, right? That's what Dr. Claud Anderson refers to as the doctrine of unequal exchange. That's where a lot of black wealth went away, is when you trade, so when they give you something of low value and you're giving away something of high value. That's what happens every time you hear about a rapper going and dropping $20,000 at the Gucci store, right? I wasn't making fun of Moneybagg Yo. I think he was the guy that was bragging about it. He spent $26,000 on a bunch of Louis Vuitton drip, but I said, bro, you know that drip that you spent $26,000 for probably cost Bernard Arnault $400, and that's why Bernard Arnault is worth $100 billion, and you never will be. Right? Because he's engaged in the doctrine of unequal exchange. So effectively, student loan debt is the doctrine of unequal exchange in action. So really that debt is not a valid debt in the first place. So let's say that you owe me $800 because I gave you a candy bar, right? So 5 years later, you're $800 in debt. Let's say you paid down the debt a little. You're still $700 in debt. And then let's say also that I owe you money. Let's say that that you did work for me and I never paid you. Let's say you did let's say you did $1,000 worth of work for me and I never paid you for the work. And so you came to me and you said, hey, Boyce, I did $1,000 of work for you. You owe me $1,000. And then let's say that I say, well, I don't know. I'm going to argue with you on that a little bit, but you do owe me that $600 for that candy bar. So how about I cancel the $600 debt that you have for the candy bar, and that'll be me covering like the majority of what I owe you, and we'll call it even, right? Is that a fair exchange? Is that fair? No, it's not. It's not. I literally created an illusion, and then I make myself the hero because I eliminated the illusion that I created in the first place. That's what government kind of does. In case you want to know a little insight into how they do elections, they manufacture a crisis and then they solve the crisis. Capitalism can work this way. That's why in a grocery store, you'll see where they'll sell you, they'll sell you fatty food in the front of the store and then sell you diabetes medication in the back, right? I'm gonna give you a bunch of Dunkin' Donuts so you'll get diabetes, and then when you get sick and fat, I'm gonna be the hero because I'm gonna sell you the medication that's gonna help you deal with the problem that I created, right? So ultimately, this is kind of what you're dealing with, right? So I don't think student loans should be part of the reparations deal. I think that it should be something that involves a direct financial investment in black families and black communities. I think it should involve trillions of dollars in assets being passed to black people that they can do with as we please, right? It doesn't involve giving white people more money to build schools for black people. It doesn't involve getting black people more jobs working for white people. All that stuff, all the stuff they talk about, even when politicians are constantly talking about getting black people more jobs, they should start by getting more black people businesses so that they can create their own jobs, or strengthening black owned businesses so they can hire more black people. That's what needs to occur. All right. So the next thing Dr. Anderson mentions, we're on page 180 of Black Labor, White Wealth. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. Give me a yes if you can still hear me. Let me know if you can still hear me okay. I want to make sure you guys can hear me all right. Hey, Alex, yes, I am live. And Michael and Tony and Boo and Bays and Linda, I see you. All right, good. Okay, good. I'm coming through okay. All right, because I'm all the way in Mexico, and the Wi-Fi in Mexico is, it's a little sketchy. So I don't know what. Sometimes I just go out, and I don't know why. That happened during my podcast, and I apologize if you were listening at that time. All right, so number 2. The U.S. government established and maintained preferential treatment laws and programs that gave preferred wealth, power, and privilege status to European whites. That was actually number 2. So let's jump to number 3. Number 3, through inheritance, accumulated wealth is passed from one family's generation to the next. Wealth acquired by white families based on the expropriation of black labor and land ownership passed on to succeeding generations of whites until the original sources of wealth became hidden by time. So what he's saying is that they stole your money, say, a couple hundred years ago. They stole your wealth, stole your land a couple hundred years ago, and they passed it on from person A to person B to person C. Now, time has kind of hidden the atrocity. Right now, they say, yeah, your land might have been stolen, but it was 100 years ago, so who cares, right? Well, the things that happened 100 years ago have a huge impact on what you see right now. Again, the NFL has 20-something teams. The lowest value team in the NFL is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are worth over $2 billion. The highest value team in the NFL is the Dallas Cowboys, which are worth about $6.5 billion. Those teams, I mentioned to you guys this in a previous conversation. Those teams were all purchased less than 100 years ago for somewhere between $100 and maybe $1,000. In fact, when the original NFL came out, you were able to buy the Chicago Bears for $100. The Green Bay Packers, I think they cost $50 or something like that, right? All these teams cost almost nothing less than 100 years ago. Now they're worth several billion dollars. So a lot of the land and property that they stole from your ancestors 100 years ago, 150 years ago, would be worth millions, if not billions of dollars today. There's literally a multi-trillion-dollar debt that's owed from everything that was taken from black people over time. You cannot forget this debt. The only thing keeping that debt alive is you. If you forget about it, then the world will forget about it. So you cannot forget the sacrifice that they made ever. All right. So he also says here that with the conclusion of slavery, dominant white society increasingly turned away from blacks and toward alternative means of producing wealth. Much of this wealth was converted into corporate stocks, public bonds, and banking certificates, which were government regulated and protected. The percentage of white wealth has remained unchanged from generation to generation. Those who inherited wealth will most likely remain wealthy and powerful. So that means that a lot of wealth is inherited wealth. That also means that when you build wealth, you have to protect your wealth through your inheritances. You must be very thoughtful about that. If you're not, you will lose everything that you built. Your kids are going to be the ones who are going to mess it all up for you. So you better be training your kids. And if you're not training them, if they're not trained, don't leave them all your money, because they will blow it. They will throw it away. Number 4, controlling less than 2% of the nation's wealth, primarily in the form of a primary residence, automobile, and savings accounts. Blacks have little wealth to pass on. Due to the minuscule number of black businesses, few blacks ever inherit a business. Discriminatory policies within the banking industry, insurance industry, and mortgage companies have impeded blacks' economic progress and the acquisition of wealth. Marginal incomes force most blacks into apartment renting or public housing tenancy, which provides neither tax shelters nor equity for future black generations to inherit. In essence, black heirs are likely to inherit permanent poverty and an unpaid debt. How often do you see that? And how often do you see that happen with people who made tens of millions of dollars rapping and playing basketball their whole life? Like, literally, are you kidding me? You're 45, 50 years old. You got 10 kids. You had 10 number one albums, and you didn't even save a nickel for the children. You had nothing in the estate plan for anybody because of what? Well, because of bad culture. You have bad culture. You have culture that teaches, how to dribble basketballs and throw footballs, how to twerk and how to sing, but not cultures that teach how to build businesses and how to preserve wealth and how to preserve legacies, right? It's not always your fault. I'm not making fun of people that are in that category. A lot of us were born in the middle of that mud, but we must make a conscious effort to confront that culture. You must do it. If you do not do it, then who's going to do it? If I'm not sitting here screaming and hollering on the internet about it, then who the hell's going to do it? I hate it. It bothers. It's stressful. If you want to know how it feels, like in my shoes, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's annoying because I have people that get mad. Oh, you a hater? What's wrong with you? Oh, he ain't cool. I thought he was cool. He's being uppity. I'm being uppity because I'm telling black people not to throw all your money away. I'm uppity because I'm telling you to educate your kids. I'm uppity because I'm telling you that if you stay high and drunk all the time, like your favorite rapper, that you're probably going to die in a puddle of piss and bad intentions. Like I'm uppity for saying these things. Do you understand how brainwashed you have to be to believe that there's something wrong with simply saying to people, look, let's stop giving all of our resources away. Let's stop it. Seriously. Seriously, it has to be part of the culture. You must reshape what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. You have to share this with your kids. Look, son, no real man is gonna die and leave his woman and his kids assed out financially. Son, no man does this. This is highly inappropriate. This is very disrespectful to your family for you to die and your children to be out here scrounging like rats in the street trying to go get a couple nickels together when you were on Instagram the week before your death showing how much money you had. Seriously, it's crazy to me. So ultimately, I think there has to be a conversation where it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's uncomfortable. Y'all see me fighting with the rappers and stuff, and some of them are real mad at me. But I can't. That's not my job to get along with ignorance. That's not my job, right? And maybe there's a better way to say it. Maybe there's a way to be more diplomatic. But I don't know what that is. I haven't. My wife's a therapist, and maybe she can help me learn some people skills so that I don't sound like such an ass when I'm yelling and screaming about this on the internet. But I'm going to keep going. Right now, that's the only weapon I got, is to do as much yelling and screaming about this as I can before I get old and die. So that hopefully when I'm gone, 1,000 of y'all, 10,000 of y'all, 100,000 of you will continue to yell and scream as we move forward. And if we yell and scream enough, and if we're consistent enough about the message, then at the end of the day, you will see transformation, you will see change. And I want you to understand that I think that we have a lot to be proud of, because I believe that we have changed culture quite a bit in the last decade. There are things that I can talk about now when it comes to wealth that people thought was like outer space in 2010, but now it's common knowledge today. Right now, so progress is being made, but we have to confront this. Right, you can't keep giving your money away. That doesn't make any sense. So when you talk about wealth, protecting wealth, understanding the basics of wealth, or making sure just little tiny things you can do, right? Like your children growing up knowing that it's better to own a house than it is to rent an apartment. That renting should be temporary, ownership should be the permanent thing that you do. Or almost in a way, it's almost like the economic version of saying, son, riding a bike is what you do when you're a kid, but eventually when you become a grown man, you're not supposed to be riding a big wheel or riding, with training wheels anymore. You're supposed to actually be in a car. Now you get on a bike for exercise, but a bike is not supposed to be your primary mode of transportation or a moped. Like you have a family now, son. You can't take your kids and your wife on the moped. You need a vehicle, right? So ultimately, that growing up process, I think, is extremely important. Another thing too is that when you're talking about this part about where he says few blacks ever inherit a business, that means that one of the things that we must do as a community is we must be very intentional about not just teaching the importance of business ownership, but making sure our kids understand the nature and structure of building a business that has the capability of scaling and creating jobs for more than one person. So if you think of a business like a vehicle, most of our vehicles are like one-seat mopeds. Like you remember when I was a teenager, I had a moped, and I couldn't ride nobody on my moped, because mopeds are funny. Like you have too much weight on a moped, it starts slowing down, right? So at best I could maybe take my girlfriend on the moped, but even with me and her, it was kind of heavy. I couldn't take my whole family on a moped. It wasn't possible, right? It would have been awkward. Somebody would have got hurt, right? So a lot of our businesses are are designed like economic mopeds, where it's like one person who, God bless him, God bless her, you were able to escape the corporate plantation, you have your business, and now you're able to, you bought yourself out of a job, you own your job. I think that's wonderful. The next level that your children are going to go to is they're going to learn how to delegate and scale, right? They're going to learn how to structure an organization that has the ability to employ tens of people, dozens of people, maybe even 100 or more people. Right. Same thing with some of these rappers or these guys on TV that are bragging about how much money they have. You look at Dr. Dre. You're supposed to be what $800 million. You gave your wife $100 million. I guess theoretically that means you have $700 million left. If you were thinking in a visionary kind of way, you would say, okay, how do I make an investment? Let's say I can invest 50 million out of my 700 million, and then go to a bank and get banks to loan me another 200 or 300 million to create an organization where I consult with experts that will allow me to create, say, 3,000 jobs. Right? Like that's doable. That's doable, but you must have the right mindset. Right? You can't have a mindset where where a grown man's more likely to know how to roll a good joint than he is to know how to actually structure an organization. These are skills that must be taught when the kids are young. What I see is a lot of wasted brain power because our kids go to school and learn a lot of things that they will never ever use in their life. They're learning, Becky and Bill's pronouns, him, her, she, it, whatever the pronouns are. They're learning all this white history. They're learning a lot of things that that are not going to serve them any value when they get older, which is why Black people must be educating Black children. And it has to be the right Black people who understand what the Black community needs. It's just like when a doctor gives you medication, he can't, if you come and you need heart surgery, he can't just give you vitamins and aspirin that he's giving everybody else. He has to give you heart surgery. He has to give you something specific to what ails you. So for Black people, you're not white, right? White people have the businesses so they can go to college without a care in the world and get a degree and then go get a job and be fine. They'll be working around more white people and everything's happy and dandy for them. You go to that same school, get that same degree, you're around people that are nothing like you. So you're going to go work at Google or working at, you're the only Black employee at Exxon, and you're going crazy. You're going crazy because you're not able to manifest at the level that you feel is necessary for you to really feel like you're having an impact on your community. You're living off in this white neighborhood. You're working for this big white company, and you're completely detached from the struggles of your community, and you don't know what to do. You don't know how to help. Right? Well, the way to help is to sort of make it part of our thinking process that the number one thing I'm going to do every day with my 40 hours a week that I'm working is I'm going to be doing something that is involving the benefit of my community. I'm going to have some business somewhere that's employing several people, or something that scales, something where other people are benefiting from my success, other people are learning from me, other people are having an opportunity to live a better life because of something that I'm doing. That requires you to have literally an army of entrepreneurs. So what I'm really trying to do here, when I'm talking to you guys, a lot of you have children, and I want you to understand that what we need, this is the thing that's going to be the $1 trillion wealth flip for Black people, is we must contribute soldiers to the Black economic army. The Black economic army, in my view, my dream is to have 5 million Black kids who are trained on 3 key things. 1, how to own and buy shares of stock and a commitment to owning as much stock as they possibly can. 2, real estate, the desire to acquire as much real estate, land, and property as possible. Right. Number 3, the ability to start a business that then has the capability of employing other people that look like them, which requires other skills that are not taught in school, like the ability to manage and nurture relationships so you can delegate tasks among other people so that you're not just working like a slave until you die. Right. These are the skills that Black kids need to learn. Other people aren't going to teach this to the kids. We must do this ourselves. So when you have your kids in the house, just focus on those 3 things. Play that little 2 minutes I just said. Play that to your wife or your husband, and let that be if you did those 3 things, then you're making a significant contribution to the community, and you're making a damn good contribution to your child. At that point, all you've got to do is give your child a little capital to work with. Start buying those shares of stock right now while they're young, so that when they get older, that money can grow and manifest. If you start buying your child, Amazon stock back, 20 years ago, and some Disney stock and all this other stuff, that kid would have hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can then play with, so they can then manifest their dream and their vision. They're not going to be be sort of this person that has this great set of ideas but can't execute any of them because they don't have the capital to work with. You live in a capitalist society, which means that you function better in a capitalist society when you have access to capital. A smart person, a smart economic thinker, an economic competitor, which many of your children are going to be, doesn't need a lot of capital to get a lot done. Like, I know a lot about how to manage capital and how to make investments work. So I can personally do more with $1 million than a lot of people can do with 80 million, literally. But having that first million at least opens the door for me to manifest some of the things that you might be seeing us doing right now. Okay. So anyway, let me keep going. Let me keep reading here. And by the way, I want to mention also, some of you are asking about the Black Wealth Bootcamp. The Black Wealth Bootcamp starts January 6th. If you'd like to join us, you can go to boycewatkins.com and feel free to take a look. It's all about the corporate plantation, reducing dependence on the corporate plantation. We've been doing this for 6 years. We do it once a year. It's very, very good. I think you guys are going to like it. So feel free to go to boycewatkins.com. And some of you are already enrolled, and I look forward to seeing you in class. There's already material there where you can get started right now, but we're going to actually do the live boot camp over 6 weeks starting on January 6th. Okay, so let's keep going. So let's see, page 180, Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. He says, let's see here. 4, controlling less than 2% of the nation's wealth. Oh, I already read that. Okay. Number 5, for hundreds of years, whites have been attracted to Black culture and music. Today, expropriated Black culture and art forms are generically called American pop culture. Popular music is a worldwide industry with $100 billion in annual revenue, probably more than that now because he wrote the book 30 years ago. But Blacks' monetary gains from their contributions to the industry are relatively minuscule. Even in the largest category of Black music, rhythm and blues, R&B, Blacks receive revenues of less than 2% of the annual $54 billion gross. Now, that's not fair, right? We know it's not fair. I would challenge you to ask yourself, whose fault is that? If we're not getting any of the money because we signed a bad deal, whose fault is it that we signed the bad deal? Sure, I think that it's other people's fault too, right? They have some responsibility, but I also don't think you're going to get very far by expecting white people to give money away, right? I mean, if you sign a contract and somebody's willing to sign their life away, I don't think a grown man is going to stop another grown man from signing his life away, because the game of economics is a competitive game. It's, if you get into a football game and the other team inexplicably decides to throw an interception every time the quarterback touches the ball, well, you're not. I mean, you could go and treat him like a child and talk him out of it, but that wouldn't make any sense, And this came up. This is an ethical issue where I noticed on Twitter, Ice Cube, who is kind of a friend to the platform. He's come around here a few times. He was getting some interesting pushback about Chris Tucker, and Chris Tucker's having some financial problems, and some people were feeling that Ice Cube didn't do right by Chris Tucker, that he screwed him and he screws his own people, stuff like that. Now, I'm not here to speak on that, right? I cannot speak to all the business dealings of Ice Cube in his whole entire life. I know him, but that I do not babysit other grown men. I cannot speak for his whole entire existence. But what I can say is that I think that it is a little bit disingenuous for us to expect Ice Cube to change Chris Tucker's diapers like he's a newborn baby. I don't really. I would make the assumption that when Chris Tucker decided to sign up to be in the movie Friday, that nobody put a gun to his head. Nobody made him do it. And it's logical. It's possible that it's quite logical that he would have wanted to be in that movie, even if he didn't make much money, because you saw that without Friday, he probably wouldn't have gotten to do all those Jackie Chan movies where he made millions of dollars. I've done that myself. I've done work for free with the hope of getting bigger opportunities down the line. Sometimes the opportunities came, sometimes they didn't. But at the end of the day, I think it's a little bit odd when we expect grown men to babysit other grown men, just like it's odd when you expect a white man to babysit you, right? Now, that does not mean, though, that there isn't some ethical responsibility on both sides, where there's going to be kind of an after-the-fact accountability that must be had, where, there's that old saying that says, I'd rather be hated than be a hater, or I'd rather be hated than to be the loser, right? So if you are the loser, then you get the moral high ground. Everyone feels sorry for you. Everyone says, oh, woe is you, you poor baby. And you get to say, yeah, I'm a good person and he's a bad person. That's why he won and I lost. And that does work. And then when you're the winner, people say, oh, you're bad. You cheated. You outsmarted everybody. That makes you a terrible person because you should have been dumb like everybody else. Right. And so when you win, you're going to have people that are going to be mad at you because you won. I've gone through that myself a lot. You know, like, oh, Boyce, you're lucky. Oh, you're blessed. And I'm like, well, you weren't there when I was in school studying 10 hours a day. When I was 28 years old studying on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you were out partying. So, but I got blessed and lucky. Okay, sure. Let's just go with that narrative. So I think that at the end of the day, when you talk about the competitive economics, I think it's very important for us to understand that when you look at what happened with the music industry, when you look at the fact that we are clearly, without a doubt, the originators of all that represents talent in the music industry. We bring so much to the table when it comes to sports, and we don't get the economic benefits of that. Some of that is driven by the capital advantage that whites have. Some of that's driven by the fact that they have certain infrastructure that allows them to monetize something at a higher scale than we can, right? Without a doubt. But but what you must also kind of pay attention to, though, is that doesn't mean that we didn't leave money on the table, right? If you look at examples like maybe TLC, you know, when TLC signs the contract with Pebbles, and everybody says Pebbles ripped off TLC and took advantage of TLC, blah 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 blah. Well, I mean, Pebbles didn't stop TLC from reading the contract, right? Maybe if they read the contract, they, you know, because they were talented, maybe they could have said, "Hey, we want to work with you, but you know, we're good. Everybody knows we're good. So we can go sign with somebody else. So we're not going to sign with you unless you change this clause or change that clause." Same thing is true, you know, when you hear about, say, Megan Thee Stallion complaining about her contract, right? A lot of people don't read the damn contract because they were not trained on any form of financial literacy. They were only taught how to sing, dance, and twerk. That's it. They didn't take the time. Nobody wants to learn how to read the contract or do the business side of things. So when you're talking about something like the creation of hip hop, which came out of the South Bronx in the 1970s, we controlled all of that. That was our stuff. And the only people that were really at that time, as far as big name people that really saw the business side of things, were people like Russell Simmons, who said, "Whoa, wait a minute! With this rap thing, we can really turn this into a multi-million-dollar opportunity." So that's why Russell Simmons ends up working with Curtis Blow. That's why he ends up grabbing his brother, or was it Runs his brother, right? So he literally grabs his brother and puts him in a group with his friend Daryl down the street, and they form Jam Master Jay, and next thing you know, they got Run DMC because Russell Simmons. You know, God bless him. He's another friend. I know the guy. You know, he's a very nice guy. He's a man of his word. At least when I worked with him, I enjoyed working with Russell a lot. And he was able to see something other than just, you know, rapping and partying. Right? He was able to see the business side of things. And so, what a lot of your kids are going to do, the reason they're going to have a huge advantage is because when everybody else is getting caught up in the excitement of something, your children are going to be able to see the economic potential of that thing. Right. And sure, from an ethical standpoint, they're going to do their best to try to involve and engage their friends and say, hey, look, if we set this up a certain way, we can make this into a money thing. But also understand that when they win, somebody's going to hate them for winning. Somebody's going to think they exploited somebody along the way. But the truth is that in some situations, you can't really explain the big vision to people who can't see the vision at all. Right? You can't explain the power of ownership to a person who's been brainwashed to believe that a paycheck is all that matters. You can't. You know, have you ever tried? Has anyone ever gone through that? Give me a yes or no if you've ever gone through this, where you've tried to explain the potential of a business idea to somebody who was only saying stuff like, "Well, how much am I going to get paid? Well, I need money by Saturday. I got to pay the car note. I got to pay the utility bill," right? So it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with a person that thinks that way. Maybe that's a legitimate issue, but there are some people who have the ability to delay gratification. That is also a trained skill. Did you know the Stanford marshmallow experiment? I told you all about that, where they basically tested kids to see who could delay gratification the longest. And they found that the kids with the ability to delay gratification the longest were the most successful kids. The kids that had to have it right now, that they grow up and they become the adults that need to get that paycheck on Tuesday, those are the people that never get anywhere because you can't own the future if you're not planning for it. Right? If all you can do is see the present, then you will never own the future, because the future's gonna come and slap you upside the head, and you're gonna get mad and say, somebody tricked me, somebody took it, somebody stole from me. Nobody stole from you. They were probably dangling opportunities right in front of your face, but because you weren't trained to have a vision beyond next Friday, you didn't see any of that. In 2012, all you saw was 2012. Some people in 2012 saw 2021, and those are the people who are winning in 2021. Right? Seriously, you could have bought Bitcoin for $10 just a few years ago, not that long ago. You could have bought 300 Bitcoins or something, right, for $3,000. 300 Bitcoins right now, what would that be worth? Let me see. 58. I can't even do the math. That's a lot of money. 3 Bitcoins is 150,000. So 30 Bitcoins would be 1.5 million. 300 Bitcoins would be $15 million. That right there. I'm thinking about that. 300 Bitcoins a decade ago. I know people who've done this literally. I'm not kidding. I know a guy who back when Bitcoin was like $2, bought like 100 of them and just forgot about it. And then one day realized he had, whatever 58,000 times 100 is, that's what, $5.8 million. Yeah, he did that because he literally got the egg. He got the golden egg and he sat on it. And then he realized it and he started cashing out. So this does happen. This happens to real people. So right now, there's something in front of you that costs $10 that's going to be worth thousands of dollars a few years from now. Those who have vision are going to see it. Those who don't have vision are not going to see it. The people who are going to control the year 2030 are the people who can see 2030 in 2021. That's why it's extremely important for you to pay attention to trends, pay attention to what's going on with metaverse, electric vehicles, cannabis, crypto, all these things that are going to become massive in the future. If you get there first, then you own it. You got to get to the spot first. That's the key. All right, so let me keep going. Number 6, traditional Black history courses focus on the achievements of individual Blacks instead of presenting information in a complete context. This teaching approach fails to discuss the circumstances or tell the story of the contributions that Blacks have made as a group to this country and the world's economic development. By and large, neither Blacks nor whites know about Blacks' full role in the development of the New World. That's a big one right there. I mentioned to you guys the film Happy, Hapi. Shout out to the great people that were in it. The names that only come to mind right now are Professor James Small, Dr. Wade Nobles, and a few others. I think Red Pill and Blue Pill. I think one of those two brothers were in there. And it's a great movie because it really goes back to ancient Kemet. And the other one, Tony Browder. I believe Tony Browder's in it. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, and a lot of great people, and they do a really good job of explaining all this history. This should be part of your child's Black history curriculum, so you may want to go take a look at the film. It's called Happy, Hapi. They're actually doing a screening in Houston. If you want to get a ticket to the screening, we're supporting them. You can go to boycewatkins.com. The ticket's right at the top. Dr. Jeffries, yep, absolutely. The ticket's right there at the top, so you can click on the link at boycewatkins.com. It's right there at the top. It's going to be in Houston by January 8th. So if you live in the area, feel free to go down and check it out. All right, number 7. The American government owes its Black citizens for the Black Holocaust that lasted nearly 400 years as a result of governmental policy, decree, and sanction. This includes the premature deaths of millions of Blacks, the expropriation of Black labor, the psychological and sociological damage under slavery and Jim Crowism, and the assignment of Blacks to a poverty underclass. White society in general, and government in particular, still owe Blacks the 40 acres and a mule that were explicitly promised by the U.S. Congress, President Andrew Johnson, and General William Sherman in 1865. Providing reparations for Blacks would not establish a precedent, for the U.S. government has a history of making restitution to American Indians and Japanese. The German government is still making restitution to Jews who survived death and slavery in the Nazi concentration camps. The German government, through the Jewish Claim Conference, has already allegedly paid nearly $55 billion to approximately 50,000 Holocaust survivors, more than $1 million per survivor, according to written reports. Similarly, in 1991, the Japanese Recovery Act authorized the United States government to make restitution payments to Japanese Americans who the United States relocated to internment camps during World War II. Reparations to Japan and Germany began immediately following the end of World War II to rebuild the economies of the defeated Japanese and German peoples. America and the Allied nations paid more than $14 billion in reparations. So they went and attacked Japan, dropped bombs on Japan, were mortal enemies with Japan, and then went and dropped $14 billion on Japan to rebuild after they tore everything up. So my question would be, at what point do we ask or demand these politicians to go rebuild these urban communities that have been destroyed, many of them even being run by our so-called Democratic Party friends? When do we demand that we be paid reparations like all these other groups that went through horrible experiences? In fact, even things like mass incarceration deserve reparations. When you talk about putting members of the Jewish community in concentration camps, which were terrible, well, your version of a concentration camp has been the American prison system. The biggest fear that a black man has in America, in my view, for many brothers out here, is the fear of going to the penitentiary where you are beaten and raped and starved and mistreated and away from your family, and literally watching your relatives die because you got a 100-year prison sentence over a small crime you committed when you were 18 years old. That is an absolute traumatic tragedy, and it must be recognized as such. So reparations are owed for the concentration camps in America. Reparations are owed for what happened with drugs. When they put the crack cocaine in the black community, how many of you, give me a yes in the chat, if you have a relative who either got hooked on drugs, put a yes in the chat if you have a relative who got locked up for something that involved drugs. Give me a yes in the chat if you have a relative who died because of something that was drug related, maybe a dope deal, maybe it's a drug overdose or whatever. I mean, think about that. That's three ways that black people were being destroyed over drugs. And that doesn't even count the fact that many of us were spiritually and psychologically destroyed by having to watch all this crap. I mean, think about it. I don't know who's the least lucky person in the group, the person that actually died from the drug overdose, or the person who had to continue on living life after the person they loved died from the drug overdose. Or have you ever seen what happens to people who had to grow up with a parent on crack? Some of y'all are in here. Some of you actually had this experience. My father went to prison for drugs. My stepfather, the father that raised me, my bonus father, he had a heroin addiction, right? So drugs are everywhere. So my point is to say that we deserve reparations for that. We deserve reparations for that because now you have this stench in your culture. You have a stench in your culture, in your music, where drugs are everywhere in the music now. Now they've taken something toxic and they've made it into something that seems like it's good, right? Every rapper on the radio rapping to your kids is rapping about the dope game, being in the trap, killing black people over drugs, getting high on that dope, popping mollies at the club, like literally. So you have the cultural stench that exists as a result of this trauma that you experience. You can't even move past the trauma because it's like somebody farted and the smell is in the room 3 days later. Like that's how bad it is, right? So and they didn't just fart on you, they crapped on you, they crapped on your community, and you kind of cleaned out the room, but the smell is in the damn carpet. You need to give me a new carpet. Seriously. So it's in your culture now. Like now we think that's cool. I'm in love with the cocoa. You remember that song? When they were around, your price is way too high. You need to cut it. Right? I can name 1,000 songs right now that were #1 hits that were all about drugs. Come on, man. And I still have to work hard to convince people to understand that this ain't healthy and that we deserve reparations for this. They ruined your culture. Like they destroyed you. They kicked you square in the testicles and then punched you in the face. Let me keep going. So the stuff that these other groups went through, that was temporary. I mean, the Nazi Holocaust, as horrible as it was only 6 years. The Japanese internment camps, temporary. It's only through World War II. Temporary. They've been beating you into the ground for hundreds of years. So what is that worth? What kind of check do you need to write to make that correct? The relocated Japanese were not enslaved, murdered, and Dr. Anderson makes the comparison. He says the relocated Japanese were not enslaved, murdered, castrated, or statutorily exploited. Yet for their 4 years of inconvenience, indignity, and material loss, the United States paid each Japanese claimant $20,000. The Japanese government apologized to Asian women who were forced into prostitution during World War II. Neither blacks nor black African nations have gone to war with America or England, but they have yet to receive apologies or reparations from either nation. Number 8, a disproportionate number of Asian and Hispanic immigrants established businesses and functioned as conduits for removing money from the black community. These merchants do not usually hire blacks, identify with, or live in black communities. They charge higher prices for their goods, and they do not patronize black-owned businesses. So he's making an analysis of where your money's going. It goes back to when I was telling y'all earlier, when I went to China, how they were protecting the money, and they were not just protecting their money. Their game is simple. Their game is, we're not going to give you none of our money, but we're going to do everything we can to take every penny you got. So what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine. Who do you think is going to win that game? Who do you think is going to win that game? So this is the way the economic game is played. Black people have to learn how to be a little bit stingy. We have to learn how to be a little bit rude. We have to be a little bit clear, intentional. Like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not buying from you, right? So what he says, he lists a group of recommendations. This is page 182. And we're gonna finish up here. We're gonna go for a little bit more, and then because this gets me so pumped up, I literally got to go lay down. I need my wife to rub my head for a while, because this burns me up as much as it burns you up as I'm reading along and kind of understanding this. So he says recommendations. Number one, it is time for blacks to make acquiring reparations from the American government a major national issue. Reparations payments should be directed into black communities in the form of infrastructure improvements, business and industry development loans, educational grants and stipends, and expanded public services to repair the socioeconomic damages that the dominant society and government have inflicted on 16 generations of black Americans. If you don't fight for it now, your children will have to fight for it later. Number two, an immigrant fee should be charged to all new immigrants and channeled into an investment fund earmarked for the economic revitalization and industrial development of black ghettos. America remains the premier destination for legal and illegal immigrants all around the world. It is clear that the government must stop the tide of immigrants seeking the benefits of first-class citizenship who have neither paid any dues nor contributed toward building the quality of life they are seeking. Immigrants should no longer be given a free lunch upon the granting of citizenship. It is criminally unfair for generation after generation of European, Asian, and Hispanic immigrants to be brought into this country and allowed to enjoy benefits historically denied blacks. Directing immigration fees into an investment fund would not be a novel initiative. The 1990 Immigration Act allows 10,000 visas each year for foreign investors who invest between $500,000 and $3 million in an enterprise that provides employment for at least 10 full-time U.S. workers. Blacks could use the act as a model for establishing an immigrant investment fund to industrialize black communities and improve its economic conditions. With small modifications, the visas could be issued to investors who put money into black communities. Smaller immigration fees could also be established and directed toward black reparations programs. The economic justice that would be inherent in such fees would not only be the repayment to black communities for its expropriated labor, the fees could also cushion the new immigrants' drain on social services, establish common ground between the immigrants and blacks, and repair the economic drain that these ethnic businesses cause in black communities. So let's talk about that for a minute. If I come over here and I'm from India and I set up a convenience store in a black neighborhood, I buy a 7-Eleven or something, right? Not to be stereotypical, but y'all know what it is. We can be honest in this space. Am I planning to make a profit? Yes or no? Is my family going to benefit if I'm from India or Pakistan and I set up a 7-Eleven in a black neighborhood? Am I going to make money? What do you think? You think that's a good move? You think I might be able to get paid a little bit? What do you think? So it sounds to me that, given that we know that, I see a lot of yeses. So it sounds to me like, given that we know that they're going to get paid, they're going to make money, they're going to make a profit, it is not out of the question on any level to require that they be forced to give some of that money back in advance. That you give back to the thing from which you are taking. It's no different from environmentalism. If you chop down a tree, they say you need to go plant a tree, or plant 2 trees for every 1 tree you chop down, right? So these little exchanges balance the playing field. And one of the things that we have to do as black people is stop letting people get us caught up in this whole idea that simply making commonsensical statements like that is anti-immigrant. It's not anti-immigrant. It's actually pro-immigrant. Because look, if you are paying your fair share, then we're not going to have as much of a problem with you. Because one day when we wake up and realize that you've been ganking the neighborhood for the last 20 years, somebody might throw a brick through your window and end up, end up hurting somebody. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want anybody to hate you. We want everybody to know that, look, you paid to get in the game. You paid to play. If I go to any other community, I got to pay to play. If I want to go and hang out with the Italians and make money in the Italian neighborhood, I got to pay to play. If I'm in Miami, I want to go make money from the Cubans, well, I got to pay to play. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what you call common sense. So get rid of this idea that you're supposed to give everything away for free. You're not supposed to do that. You're not here for everybody. You got to be here for yourself first, period. Let me keep going. He said the investment fund strategy would also provide training and investment loans for Blacks to start businesses. Furthermore, just as ethnic immigrants are using revenues generated from their Black-oriented businesses in order to pay transportation costs of their relatives and friends from their homelands to America, Blacks could use investment funds to cover the cost of bringing in and hiring immigrants of African descent. In fighting for such measures, Blacks could make a national issue out of racial justice within the American immigration policies. I think that's quite enough for today. I think that we've covered quite a bit, and I'm not trying to raise my blood pressure too much because I don't know about y'all. This stuff ends up burning me up and making me mad. I literally end up sweating after I do the book club meetings because I feel like this is infuriating, some of it, but it's enlightening as well. So after we finish being pissed off about what we read, it's important that we start strategizing and elevating. So one of the things I would like to ask you to do is share this with somebody else, right? I think sharing this message is a good start to changing the national conversation. I know we can do this because we've done it before. We've worked with people that have bigger platforms than me. I sat on the phone with Charlemagne and Ice Cube and Kanye West and people like that, and they've helped change the conversation. They're not perfect people. They're not doing everything the way that you might agree, but they're helping to shift the conversation. They're making people pay attention who weren't paying attention before. So you cannot give up on yourself. You are going to win. And the reason you're going to win is because you are the smartest people in the fucking room. Excuse my French. I didn't mean to. I won't cuss no more. I know some of y'all got kids watching, but you're the smartest ones in the room. So you're going to win. You're the most determined group of people in the room. So you're going to win. You have gone through more than anybody else in the room in order to get here. Think about this. You were born in the middle of trash, and you've risen to become shining stars of intellect and light in this community. So that's why you're going to win. And your children are going to win too. So as much as you want to get mad, don't fret, don't panic, because we will win, period. Thank you, Joseph Davis. I see that trophy in the chat. So I'm going to walk away with good energy. I'm not going to walk away too mad. But at the same time, we got to step up. We got to do our best. We got to show up as our best selves, and we cannot be afraid. So anyway, guys, I will be back next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, like we always do Wednesday nights with the book club. Also, the Black Wealth Bootcamp starts on January 6th. So if you still like to join, feel free to go to boycewatkins.com. And we want to serve you in the Black Business School. And so if you have any questions about anything in the Black Business School, I hope that we can help you serve your educational needs. So you can email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. That's support@theblackbusinessschool.com. God bless you. Have a good night. And I'll see you guys soon. I'll talk to you when I get back from Mexico as well. Take care. Bye-bye.